Hi everyone, it's Corey Jones with Remax Sarnia Realty, HomeTeamAdvantage.ca, and proud sponsor of LoveSarniaLambton.ca. I'm just here with Angela Lefebvre with Perfect Plans. Angela is a mortgage agent, and I just wanted to take the opportunity to have you all get to know her a little bit better. So welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be here
That's
today.
our pleasure. We're happy you're here. So first of all, talk to me about your name, Perfect Plans. How did you come up with that name?
When I was trying to pick a name, I really just wanted something that was, I guess, to make people sort of understand that mortgages aren't just a loan for your house. Mortgages are a much bigger picture of, I guess, your wealth, your generational wealth, right?
Awesome.
So it's a plan. When you're looking at it, you want to look at all aspects of what you're doing, and it's long term. So when I was, sort of wanting to show that, I wanted to say it in a really quick, easy way, and Perfect Plans to me is that's what you're trying to do, right? You want the perfect plan to get you exactly where you're going for retirement or for investing or for wherever you want to go with your money, because your house is an asset that you could use to do so many things. So that's the reason I picked it.
That's awesome. No, and I think a lot of people do. They just kind of think, well, you know what, I just need this mortgage so I can buy this house, and they don't think about how it affects them afterwards, right? So
and they don't think about all the things you could do with that. Like there are so many opportunities when you have a house to be able to do things.
Absolutely. Very cool. No, that's a great name. So, and what made you decide to become a mortgage agent?
There's a million personal reasons, really. I mean, it has this really lovely, my own business, my own flexibility, building things the way I want.
Right.
I also knew it sat well with, who I am as a person. I really like problem solving. I really like strategy.
Okay.
And so everything to do with mortgages fit that. I knew I liked numbers, so I knew it was going to be a good fit for me personally. But the other reason I think is just I wanted to do something that was giving to people.
Okay.
And a home and where you live is as a need. It's not a want.
Right.
You need to live somewhere. So I don't know. I felt like being able to provide that or help with that was just a big piece of giving to the community. So
absolutely.
So that's sort of the other side to that.
Very cool. No, and I mean that's actually one of the reasons that I got into real estate as well, right?
Yeah.
And not only that, and certainly we've got lots of great agents in Sarnia, but throughout the years, I've had some experiences where, I thought, well, maybe I could just treat somebody a little bit better than that, or maybe I didn't like the way they handled that. And is that something you kind of experienced at one point as well, and thought, hey?
Absolutely. You go through life and you have these experiences, and then you think, you know what, I think I could do a good job of that. I think I could make someone, feel more comfortable or less stressed, or, and the thought of being able to provide that to give excitement and enthusiasm to something that is very momentous in someone's life. Buying a house is huge, but then also being able to help with the stress load and make things go smooth and seamless. I think that's really big. I think it's fun and exciting, and and I get really emotionally invested in it, and I shouldn't, but I do.
No, and I think it's good that you do, actually, to be honest with you, because I think you need to. It's important when people see that you're not just doing this just to make a paycheck.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
That you're doing it because you actually care. And I think that's huge. And not that there's anything wrong with people who are driven. We don't work for free, but it is important to know that there's always somebody at the other end of it, and that they're more important than making the deal happen. Right. So,
it is their life.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So when we talked originally, you mentioned you're not from Sarnia. So where did you come from?
I grew up in a little town of about 7,000 people called Rocky Mountain House. It's sort of in Alberta. It's just in the foothills of the Rocky Mountains. I'm kind of halfway in between Edmonton and Calgary. So little tiny town, and I lived in various parts of Alberta for a lot of years, and then my now husband and I moved to BC, and we were living in Penticton, BC before we moved to Sarnia. So we've been sort of all out in the west.
Awesome. What brought you to Sarnia? Was it the beaches, or?
Partially.
Okay.
My husband grew up in Sarnia.
Okay.
So we have lots of family in Sarnia.
Okay. Awesome.
We were out in BC, and we had our first child, and we were sort of our little island out there on our own, and kids and help was good. So
absolutely.
And obviously my husband has to be a beach. He's not
Okay.
going to live anywhere without a beach.
Gotcha.
So yeah,
Gotcha.
going back to family and Sarnia, yeah, there were lots of reasons to come
That's
here.
awesome.
It made sense.
That's awesome. And you've been here for how long now?
We've been here for just over 5 years.
Okay, all right. So you're local now. Once.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
I've started to use the local lingo a little
There you
bit.
go.
So
Good,
yeah.
good. Yeah, no longer wearing the Berta hats and things like that. So
Yeah.
so that's good. Let's talk about mortgage pre-approval. At what point do you normally recommend somebody get pre-approved? So they're thinking, let's buy a house. When should they come see you?
Yeah. Ideally, sooner the better.
Okay.
Yeah. If you don't know how much you qualify for, if you don't have any idea of what you could get in terms of a mortgage, you probably should talk to someone and get a pre-approval, because if there's no point in looking at something you can't afford. It's just going to put this idea in your head that, of what you might want that you're not going to get right now. It doesn't mean ever.
Right.
So it's important to know where you're going, and then when you can start looking and you can keep your expectations sort of in the right line and really figure out what you're doing.
Right, absolutely. So yeah, and I mean, like you say, even if they're not ready now, it's good to have a plan in place, right? To what they can afford. So
Absolutely.
And we obviously see that on our end of the industry as well. Where, somebody gets excited and they think, well, I can totally afford that. But but there's a big difference, right, between just being able to afford it necessarily and actually qualifying for that.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're even thinking of buying a house in a year or two, maybe we don't have to do a whole pre-approval right now, because obviously, they're going to expire in 4 months, but you could really talk about where you are, how far out you are, develop a plan for how to get there. If you're a first-time home buyer, there's some really great tools. They've just launched the new first home savings account.
Okay.
You could put money, for your down payment, start saving for that. You get a tax benefit to that. You could take your tax refund and put that back into your first home savings account. And you really could start to snowball, your down payment, so that when you're ready, you know how much you need, you know where to go, and then you can shop, and you'd be so much more prepared than, sort of just starting after you've looked at 6 houses and go, ooh, this is what I want.
Right.
But you're not going to get there now for 2 years because we haven't done that plan, right?
Right, absolutely. And there's nothing worse than getting your hopes set on something and then nothing else kind of lives up to that expectation, right?
Exactly.
So, and we've seen that with every age group, whether it's first time home buyers or somebody who's owned multiple homes. So that's great. So
and that really relates it back to that whole planning aspect, I guess, where we talked about my name, and that's just it. I mean, nobody buys, most people don't buy their forever home as their first home, right? It's usually a stepping stone. We're talking about, we're making leaps to get where we want to be eventually.
Right.
So that is that planning aspect. That's talking to your professionals and knowing where you want to go, and then putting the pieces in place to get you there.
Right. Absolutely. Now, let me ask, and it wasn't something I actually prepared you for, or not one of the questions we talked about earlier, but is there a cost associated with somebody chatting with you about coming up with a plan, or?
Absolutely not. So the way it works most of the time with mortgage brokers is we are paid by the lender when you actually get a mortgage.
Okay.
So, and we're more than happy to talk with you anytime to get, sort of the ball rolling, or to get you in the right spot, because the more prepared you are, obviously, the smoother it's going to go down the road. So when we're looking to put you into that mortgage, you're not going to be super disappointed if we have to come back and say, oh, we can't do that right now. We can't qualify you for what you wanted, right? So no cost. Come in, talk, ask questions. We love to talk about mortgages. Actually, we really do. I know it may seem interesting, but we'll talk about it all day long. It's no problem.
That's awesome. So now, most mortgage brokers they work from a home office, and I'm assuming that's the same with yourself.
Yeah.
So are you open to meeting people at their office, or at a coffee shop, or at their homes, or what's the best?
I mean, I do have the ability to do everything virtual.
Okay.
Most of the time it is done phone, email.
Okay, yeah.
If you're uncomfortable with that, for sure we can find a spot to work. I sort of cautioned a little bit about a coffee shop, only because we're talking about really confidential private information.
Right, good point.
And that's really sometimes uncomfortable for people to talk in, in a public place. But
absolutely.
Yeah, whatever makes you comfortable. Like, I'm open to discussing how you might want to sit down and do that, and we would do it.
Awesome. Yeah. So you're flexible, but you can do and usually do most things virtually, which is great. But like you say, there are some people, especially I think since COVID ended,
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's kind of back, but since COVID ended, I think a lot of people have kind of missed that face to face.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, you are giving really sensitive information. Sometimes it's
For sure.
nice to at least meet the person that you're giving that information to, right?
Absolutely.
And not just be sending it out into the
That's
internet.
right. I assume that you're a mortgage. Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, for sure. So what does an ideal mortgage candidate look like?
For me, the ideal mortgage candidate would just be someone that comes in with the expectation that the mortgage process is a very personally invasive process in terms of finances. So to understand that I'm gonna sometimes ask questions that might make you a little uncomfortable.
Sure.
And to understand that I'm not asking because I'm nosy. I'm not
Right.
asking because I'm judgmental.
Right.
I'm asking because I'm trying to, really what we're trying to do is paint a picture of who you are on paper financially
Right.
to a lender. That's what they want to see. They want to know about your character and
Okay.
everything you have going. And the more I know up front,
Yeah.
the better I can put that picture down for a lender to say, yeah, I think this person would be a good candidate to, lend hundreds of thousands of dollars to.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense. So it sometimes doesn't just come down to just stats and how much money you earn necessarily. So if there's a story behind how you got what you got, it can make a difference.
Absolutely does not. I mean, to some extent, yeah, there's boxes we have to tick, and
Sure.
and we can't go to certain spots if we can't tick those boxes.
Right.
But mortgage brokers have access to many different types of lenders.
Right.
Some of them are lenders that are willing to ignore certain boxes.
Okay.
But the only way we can go ahead with those types of situations is to really know what we're dealing with, what
Right.
we're talking about. If we have some bruised credit, or if we have, I don't know, it could be a whole number of reasons. Maybe your income doesn't qualify the way you thought it would qualify, so
Right.
your income doesn't get you to where you're going. Like business owners, sometimes that happens, right?
Yeah.
So we're looking at a sort of an alternative type lender.
Right.
They're willing to overlook that. But we really do need to talk about your story at that point. They want to know
Right.
why is it that way.
Right.
So just being prepared that, I'm going to ask sometimes questions that they really feel nosy. I'm not nosy, honest.
Right.
I'm just I'm asking to prepare your situation to go to a lender so that they won't ask those questions after the fact.
Right.
Because they will ask.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. And we've had that from the real estate side of things. We've had people call us and say, I can't believe this mortgage broker's asked me this question. Like, don't they trust me? Well, it's not about trust.
It
right?
isn't at all. It's about, I know what I'm going to get asked, and if I can cover that before the lender thinks of it, they trust you more.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome. So you're just going to bat for them and trying to give them as much information as you can. That's awesome.
That's the other thing I know, that sometimes people are afraid of salespeople a little bit. They think, I'm just here to, get this deal done because that's my income. And yes, that's true to an extent, but really my job is to represent you and to do the best I can for you. And the happier the customer is, the more, I would hope, I guess it's karma coming back to you, right? They're willing to refer me to people.
Right.
My business is better.
Yeah.
So it's really a win-win situation, and I'm on the customer side.
Right.
Yeah.
So because you're relatively new to Sarnia, and Sarnia is a fairly small community, are you finding that a large portion of your business has been from referral?
Yes.
Okay.
Referral usually, I mean, I think you get that automatic trust factor there,
Right.
especially when you're doing things a lot virtually.
Right.
It's easier for someone to come into a situation to be like, this person said you would help me out, and that you're a good person, and yeah.
Awesome.
So you just get that automatic trust, which is nice.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're getting a lot of clients who are saying, hey, you should use Angela because she's just great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. What would you say are the biggest challenges you run into when trying to get somebody approved for a mortgage?
Right now, the biggest challenge is qualifying.
Okay.
Just with interest rates really high, real estate prices have been going up. What people can afford and what they want sometimes aren't correlating that well. I think sometimes people are a little bit surprised when they find out how much they need in order to get where they want to go.
Right.
It can be a shock at times.
Okay. So I mean, that makes sense. That's not something that is their fault necessarily, and certainly not something you can. It's situational, just the market the way it is, and and are you finding that people are kind of holding off to kind of wait and see what's happening, or are you getting a lot of that recently? Or
I do think interest rates people get very, very focused on interest rates, and that really drives what they want to do.
Right.
That's maybe not always the best course of action. I
Right.
feel like
Okay.
if you can afford to get into the market, or afford that, we're really, what we need to be talking about is not the rate,
Right.
is about how, if you can afford the situation.
Right.
If you can do that, you're always probably better off to get in sooner than later in something that's an appreciating asset, right? Because now
Sure.
you're buying it and you're building.
Right. Right.
So
And they always have the opportunity to renew their rate when rates drop too, right?
yeah, I know, and everybody, they always just, I find a lot of people are just, it's that 5-year fixed or a
Right.
variable mortgage.
Right.
And variables are pretty expensive, and no one wants 5 years right now because interest rates
Right.
are really expensive, right?
Right.
But no, there are 1-year, 2-year rates. There's open mortgages. There's all different types of products you can talk about.
Okay.
So you could get in and just lock yourself in for a year or two, and then renew
Right.
and get something better down the road. And I mean, the amount you're going to pay for the extra interest now is probably going to be covered by the amount of gain you're going to get by owning a property, paying on principal, and it also appreciating in value. So
Right. And I mean, the reality is we also saw what happened when the interest rate was super low, is that the prices of houses skyrocketed as well.
that's right. It's
So,
that yin and yang, right?
absolutely. So
So-
it definitely weighs, kind of balances itself out. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. They just, like you say, they hear rate. And I mean, to a certain degree, I think it's good people are more trained to pay attention to rate than what they used to, because it used to just be for everything, whether it was a car payment, whether it was whatever, it was just like, oh, I can afford this,
Yeah.
right? And so they never really knew what they were getting into until maybe it was too late.
Right.
But with that said, something like a home, like you say, where it's an appreciating asset rather than something that depreciates, right?
Yes,
Or has,
yeah.
yeah, for sure, it makes sense, absolutely. So is there anything, once you've had somebody pre-approved, is there anything that could between the time they're pre-approved and the time that the home closes, is there anything that could disqualify them, or could,
Yeah.
okay, what have you run into, or what?
So really, when we look at a mortgage transaction, there are, I always say, 2 sides to the coin. So when we're getting a pre-approval, we're looking at only one side of that coin, which is the
Right.
person that's buying the mortgage. We're looking at all your income, we're looking at your debt, and we're saying, could you afford, and how much can you afford? And here's what we would give you, right? So that's
Right.
one side. So on the other side of a real mortgage transaction, there's also the property.
Okay.
So in a pre-approval, we said yes to everything here, but the property was still unknown. So
Right.
your biggest thing that could tank a pre-approval would be buying a property that the lender then doesn't like.
Right.
So they're just going to kill it because, no, I don't want to be invested into this property. So those types of things might be, you buy something and then appraisal comes back way below
Right.
what you purchased it for.
Right.
Or else there could be, structural issues or something that comes up in an appraisal that, the lender doesn't want to touch. There's
Right.
an old grow up, or there's black mold, or,
Right.
they've got some old weird wiring, anything like that.
Okay.
So there's that situation. And then the only other situation that really would tank a pre-approval would be if the homeowner, the client, the person looking to get the mortgage, if their situation drastically changes from the
Okay.
time they pre-approve,
Okay.
right? So when we do a pre-approval, it's kind of static. You have this much income, you have this much debt, and you can get this much money with that. If any of those little components change drastically,
Okay.
that could tank a pre-approval. So you lose your job, you now no longer have income. You change a job,
Right.
and you don't have history with the new job you get, the
Okay.
lender might not like that.
Gotcha. Okay.
You buy a car.
Yeah.
And now you've taken on $60,000. Well, now
Right.
you can't qualify for the $400,000 we had you qualified for, right? We can only qualify you for less because now you have more debt.
Absolutely.
So really, people need to remember that once you're in that pre-approval state, you kind of need to try and keep things as static as possible
Right.
until you get to closing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, we've all heard stories, and like you say, with somebody going out and buying a car and things like that. But I personally have even had situations where somebody got excited and went out and don't pay for 2 years on furniture and completely furnished the house, and not realizing that.
Yeah, that's
That's
put on your credit report, and the
Absolutely.
lender's gonna pull your credit again before they close your deal. That's just gonna happen, right?
Absolutely. So yeah. So just keep things as static as you can until you have those keys in your hand.
Yeah, and I
And then go
mean,
shopping.
sometimes life happens. Sometimes something changes and you can't help that, right? You
Right.
lose your job.
Right.
Maybe you get in a car accident and you have to go get a new car.
Right.
But then at that point, that's when you really need to bring back in the conversation, bring your mortgage broker back, and
Right.
you need to be careful about what you're doing and moving forward how that might look for you. So definitely be open and honest about that, and and be double checking.
So then would you advise then a situation like that, somebody gets into a car accident, heaven forbid, and they now have to buy a new car, the house doesn't close for 30 days, should they contact you right away and say, hey, listen, you know what, this is what I had to do, or this is what I have to do?
I would say contact me before you buy the car.
Okay, good. All right, so I've been in an accident, I need to go shopping.
Let's look at like, did you have a payment? What's your insurance payout?
Right.
How much are you looking to get back in? How much wiggle room did you have
Gotcha.
in that pre-approval? Some people
Yeah.
have wiggle room. Some people
Sure.
can add debt and it'll be fine.
Yeah.
Some people have no wiggle room.
Right.
So it's really situational. But yeah, that's why you say you do it before you
Okay.
make the decision, right? Like
Okay.
you talk about what you could do
Right.
before you do it.
Okay, that's great advice, because I think like a lot of people wouldn't really think,
Yeah.
oh no, I've got this mortgage that I'm going to have in another 30 or 60 days. I need a car. Let's go do it, right? So
Yeah.
you might have to bus it for a month, or rely on friends and family to get you where you need to go if that's the case, if your wiggle room's not great enough, right? So
Yeah.
absolutely. So to kind of go back to the interest rate, so experts, I mean, we all hear, and I use experts kind of loosely, we hear all kinds of thoughts on what's happening with the market, what's going to happen next year, what's going to, what are your personal thoughts on what interest rate, what things are going to look like with the interest rate in the near future?
Yeah. Okay. So I'll tell you what the experts are saying
Okay.
they think will happen.
Yeah.
I think most are all sort of on board with the fact that some point in 2024, it's not going to happen this year, interest rates will start to creep back down,
Okay.
maybe mid 2024.
Okay.
If you want my personal opinion on it, yes, interest rates are going to have to go down at some point in time. Interest rates are going to go down at some point in time.
Right.
I think the biggest thing that the last 3 years has taught me is that predictions are really useless. Like
Right.
you can only sort of guarantee about the unpredictability of it. I
Right.
don't think anyone thought we would be where we would be, right?
Right.
And the world has been quite unstable. Who thought a pandemic was coming,
Right.
right? And that
Exactly.
really changed everything, and
For
no
sure.
one would have saw that coming,
No.
right? So I think that, I think that I'm going on the side of unpredictability.
Okay.
They will go down. When they'll go down, I don't know.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. So people who are thinking, I'm just waiting until January 1st because rates are going to drop right at the start of the year, they could be waiting a little longer.
I think probably fairly certain you're probably going to be waiting longer than January 1st. But also, I think the other thing that people, they keep talking about, rates going back to around 3%. If and when that starts to happen, it's going to happen in small chunks.
Right.
Right. It didn't go up from 2 and 3% to 6 overnight. It took a year or more of building,
Right.
and it's probably going to go down slower than it went up.
Okay.
So, to remember that when you're starting to think about time and you're looking to purchase or whatever you're looking to do, okay, so we start to see rates go down mid 2024, we might see it go down 0.25%.
Right.
And then, in 2 or 3 months, we might see it go down another 0.2. So we're not seeing big drastic drops
Right.
for probably way more than another year.
Right.
2 years, maybe
Okay.
even 3 years before we're starting to see it go down to that 3%
Gotcha.
range again, right? And that's a term, that's a mortgage term.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Right.
for sure. And that's again, if somebody's waiting that long to make a purchase, they're maybe paying rent for that much longer, or as I say, prices of homes are going to go up. So now they're going to start to price themselves out of weight themselves out of the market as well a little bit too, right?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
it's so really the best time to buy is when it's
When you can afford it,
yeah.
when it makes sense for you. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, I agree for sure, 100%. Okay, so we talked about mortgages, now we have to talk about the important stuff. So you moved to Sarnia because the beaches are beautiful. And I've got to think part of the reason you were attracted here was obviously the fries on the bridge, but something we're less known for, unless you've lived in other places, is our pizza.
Right.
We have great pizza places.
You do have great.
We have great pizza
for
places,
sure.
absolutely. Where's your favorite pizza place?
Okay, so there are a lot of really good choices.
Absolutely.
I probably thought about that question longer than I thought
Okay,
about all
give
the
me top-
mortgage questions.
Okay.
I'm like, ooh.
Give me a couple then.
Okay, but you're gonna win me over because I like to change it up a lot, so
Okay.
I'm never stuck on any one place.
Okay,
But convenience is always gonna get me.
okay,
So if you got a good website that I can schedule dinner for my family,
okay. Gotcha.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can put it in at 9 a.m. My pizza order is gonna be there at 5 o'clock.
Okay,
and you have good pizza, I'm probably going to use you more frequently than anybody else.
Okay,
So Drezzi's is getting my win on that one. Because they
Okay,
have a really good
good.
website.
They've been around a long time, so absolutely, it's 1979. They've been in
Yeah.
business, so they've had a long time to kind of perfect it. So
Yeah.
all right. So that's a good tool. I don't know if everybody necessarily knows that you can do that. You can schedule it to be picked up later. So
For sure. When
that's
you're
huge.
busy and you don't want to think about it, it's good to
That's
know
huge.
it's dealt with.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you know, and I talk about pizza specifically because I've lived in all different places as well. And I got to be honest, I don't think there's anywhere as good as here.
It is pretty good pizza.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I've lived in 2 provinces outside of Ontario,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I've had pizza in a few places.
And it's generally not as good. So anyway, and what's your favorite thing to do? What's your favorite pastime in Sarnia? What do you like to?
I'm a nature person.
Okay.
Yep, that's what I like to be outside. So you're gonna find me probably at some point of every day, out for a walk on the trails or
Nice.
getting out into just being outside and being outdoors. And Sarnia is really lovely for that. They've got a lot of really good trails.
For sure.
Absolutely. When I was living in BC, we're in the mountains, right?
Yeah.
So I'm used to hiking and being out.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
So I just kind of still gravitate towards that.
Awesome. And it's nice because most of our trails are fairly easy. Right, they're fairly easy trail. The elevation isn't super
pretty
aggressive.
flat.
Yeah, pretty flat, but still, like you say, very nice and different
lovely,
kind of beauty,
beautiful,
right? Yeah, absolutely. And there's lots of people I don't think a lot of people even realize exist, right? So everybody knows about Howard Watson Trail, and obviously it's beautiful. But there's other ones too, like Perch Creek Trail, and like there's all kinds of smaller ones that people don't really realize.
Yeah, there's a really good app called All Trails.
Okay.
And if you put in your location, it'll kind of tell you where all the little walking trails,
Awesome.
hiking trails are around. So
All trails. There you go. For anybody listening, if you're a hiker,
there's a plug that I wasn't planning
if
to
you
do.
like hike, there you go. Exactly. She gets a kickback. No, she doesn't get a kickback from it. So besides Dressie's, besides pizza places, any local spots, any local businesses that you find yourself kind of frequenting more often than others, or?
Like I said, I'm a variety person, but right now, so we've just moved into a new house, so I'm sort of thank you. I'm decorating and doing all that kind of stuff. So, and I'm also really into upcycling and taking old things and making them new. So, right now you will find me the business I'm frequenting. I'm definitely using they've got really good thrift stores.
Yeah.
So I'm doing there. I'm at the Restore a lot. Home and Cottage Interiors.
Right.
I got paint I like there. So
Awesome.
Those are the stores you're gonna find me in right now
Awesome.
that I frequent a lot.
Okay. Now, do you do most of your upcycling of the furniture yourself, or do you purchase upcycling?
No, I try to do it all myself.
Try to do it all yourself. Okay, it's an awesome. I mean, it's a skill, right? And I mean, there's a big market for it too. So there's a company that's kind of relaunched itself called Painted Fresh, and they do. She does upcycle furniture, and it's amazing. It's
beautiful. Some of the stuff you can do.
Absolutely,
I know.
yeah, for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah, I'd say we're probably our place is probably 25% upcycled and 75% new. And
I should say I don't 100%. I think that's kind of the fun of it is to take some of the old and put it in with some of the modern and try to make it all flow together like that.
Absolutely.
And I do actually frequent. I should have mentioned I do frequent a lot of the decor stores.
Yeah.
In Sarnia in general, not
Right.
just thrift stores.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, there's great stuff with them, yeah.
Save the Date Floral downtown. She's amazing. Paulina's Flower Shop. They have such beautiful stuff.
Absolutely.
I am in there as well.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So I guess back to some work stuff. Is there any message you'd like to tell people the importance of working with you to achieve their perfect plans?
I think one of the reasons and one of the reasons when I was thinking about becoming a mortgage agent and feeling in what there might be a need for in a market was just sort of that open, really quick communication, that constant, not necessarily constant, but always checking back in. And updating people and because I think part of the stress of buying a home sometimes is just not knowing what's going on.
Right.
Or wondering when am I going to know, because you really just want all the information now. Everyone wants all the information now. You can't always get it now.
Right.
So I think I really strive to just to communicate with people on where I'm, even if there's not an update to give them, even if, nothing is happening because I haven't heard back from a lender. I like to check in, especially right in the thick of it when, you're buying the house and you're waiting, to get that approval. I like to check back in and just say, I've got your email, I've reached out, I haven't heard, and just try to keep, sort of that level of communication going back and forth. So I think I do strive and really, really pride myself on being a good communicator.
That's awesome.
So
That's awesome. And I think you're exactly right. We actually talked about that in our office mastermind or roundtable meeting the other day. We talked about just communication, like whether you have the answers they want or not,
Yeah.
knowing that you don't is better than having no idea.
yeah, and I have that pet peeve of, firing an email out into the world and you don't even get a, hey, I've got this, I'm working on it,
Right.
back. You don't hear anything for weeks.
Right.
And you're like, did they get it? Should I send another one?
Right.
I'm like, I don't want to hound this person because,
Yeah.
like, I just want to know that you have it.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so I'm the kind of person that likes to touch back and just be like, thank you, I've got it. Here's when you should expect an answer. If you don't hear from me at that point, or you will hear from me
Yeah.
one way or the other at that point,
Right.
it might not be an answer, but that type of thing. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Well, that's appreciated from somebody who also has the same pet peeve. I
there
think,
you
you know
go.
what, I think it's just, have the conversation and it takes 2 seconds to respond.
Yeah.
Right? Just, hey, I don't have the answer, but I'll get it for you as quick as I can.
Exactly.
So no, that's
Right.
awesome. So we're going to wrap things up here in just a second, but one of the things I wanted to ask you is, besides finding you on lovesarnilampton.ca, where else can people find you?
You can find me, my website is perfectplans.ca.
Okay.
So pretty simple, easy to remember. From there, my phone number, my email address, everything's there. Links to my socials are there. Or you can go right to Instagram and find me at perfectplansAnge.
Okay.
And then everything is linked back the other direction.
That's
so
right.
whichever way is easier for you to find me.
Okay.
And then you can find your, the method of way you like to contact, if you like to messenger, if you like to
Yeah.
text, or if you like to email.
Gotcha.
It's all there.
So
in one spot.
you're everywhere. They can
Yes.
find you. You're easy.
Yes, I'll answer no
Perfect
matter
plan. Perfectplans.ca is a nice, easy one to remember for
Yeah.
sure. So awesome. Well, with that, folks, we're going to wrap things up. Again, Angela, I just want to thank you for coming. If anybody has any mortgage questions, feel free to reach out to Angela at perfectplans.ca. If you have any questions about real estate itself and you want to chat with me, give us a call at 519-331-5552 or check us out at hometeamadvantage.ca. Have a great day.